Just under 2 weeks ago, I expressed my concerns about the Prom film, but now it's finally on Netflix and I've seen it. Now it's time to go in depth of Ryan Murphy's hotly anticipated adaptation of the fan favourite Broadway show. We're going in depth today, so if you don't want any spoilers, I'd recommend going to watch the film and then coming back and watching this video to give me that watch time. Sorry, that's the law of YouTube. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. And of course, theatre is what? Subjective! So whether you agree or disagree with me, your opinion isn't wrong just because of what I think. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film in the comments down below. And if you smash that like button and hit subscribe, every prom in the world becomes 5% more gay. So smash that button right now. Smash it. But let's get on to my opinion. For the most part, The Prom is a pretty faithful adaptation of the original musical, and only really plays in the material in really small ways, except for two pretty big changes that are interesting. So of course, the film has just come out, and I don't have very much footage from it, because I don't want to get sued by Mr. Netflix. But don't worry, I am a fantastic editor, aren't I, Editor Daniel? So I'm sure my improvisation will be as great as the film itself. So the film opens as the PTA cancels the prom, and Mrs. Green, played by Kerry Washington, gives a cold, calculated response to the press, and the camera pans back to show Emma distraught. It's a strong opening, and I think it works well to set up the film where it wouldn't quite have worked this way on Broadway. Then we head to the Great Bright Way as we catch the opening night of Eleanor, the Eleanor Roosevelt musical, and this is where we are introduced to our first Broadway stars, Dee Dee Allen, played by Meryl Streep, and Barry Glickman, played by James Corden. Now, Meryl Streep, as I predicted, is absolutely fantastic in this film. She's selfish, but she has this energy behind her where you have to watch her. She demands your presence in every single second she's on screen, and that kind of energy is perfect for a role like Dee Dee Allen. On the other hand, we have James Corden playing Barry Glickman. James Corden isn't terrible in this film. He gives a passable performance, but the cast in this film are surprisingly strong, so he still stands out like a sore thumb and is the weakest link among them. Now, I'll also address the fact here that he is a straight man playing a gay character. Now, there are a lot of people who believe that you have to be gay to tell a gay person's story because of privilege, because of the fear of getting it wrong or misrepresenting. And I'm not strict on that because I can see both sides of the argument. However, I will say here that I feel like it doesn't work here. Because Barry Glickman as a role is very flamboyant, and that being played by a straight person can feel very disingenuous and very stereotypical. There's a very fine line with this kind of thing, and I'll just leave that there. And just judge James Corden on what he gives us, which is the first musical number is so full of energy and style. Murphy proves from the first song that he was a strong choice for the director. From the stylization with the colours to the large Broadway marquees all shining in the background, it's a feast for the eyes. But then they get the bad reviews for their new show, and the cheery atmosphere fades to depression as Trent, an out-of-work actor working behind the bar played by Andrew Rannells, and chorus girl Angie played by Nicole Kidman join them to try and cheer them up. Kidman is someone who I wish had a bit more presence in this film, because she's a lot of fun to watch on screen and she plays Angie extremely well. However, while I am a massive fan of Andrew Rannells, I do have to admit I think he is a little bit miscast here. But maybe that's just because I am such a massive stan of Christopher Sieber, and I'm not sure if Andrew Reynolds quite hits that same level of comedy that he did. But his vocals are fantastic, and of course I'm glad he's been cast in this film, because it gives the film that little bit of Broadway blood that it really needed in the main cast. So the Broadway stars have been called narcissists. So they decide to find a cause to help them in their PR disaster, when they find out about Emma and decide to help her by hitching a list with the non-equity cast of Godspell. So they hop on the bus and go doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop across the country. But then we get our first introduction to Emma, and I do have some criticisms. Jo Ellen Pellman has massive shoes to fill. Emma is a really difficult character. She has to stand out against the Broadway stars. She has to be brave and have her own voice. She has to display a mixture of emotions and truly display the pain of her situation and the trauma of how she's been treated since coming out. Now, while I do have my criticisms of her, which I will go into in my review, a lot of these can be seen as nitpicky. And I do understand it's a very hard role and there's a lot that you have to balance in this. But my main problem with Breathe as a song is that I don't think Pellman takes us on that journey. Now, some of this is due to really bad direction and staging. Who thought it was a good idea to have her randomly be swimming or playing dodgeball? This is really distracting from the actual point of the song. And then why have her get hit by the ball, but then continue to throw dodgeballs? You're trying to make me believe that every single person in this town is either homophobic or gay. But whoever this unseen gym teacher is just letting her continue pelting these dodgeballs at these people when she's very clearly out. What? But then we go to the PTA meeting and we get homophobia. Disgusting. But I do feel like the way that they handle this in the film is quite well. It's uncomfortable to watch, yes, but a lot of the things that they are saying are things that people use as excuses to be homophobic or be transphobic. They use anything to justify their bigotry, like they're being controlled by the government or their values aren't the same as other places, while they avoid the consequences of their actions and how that affects people like Emma. Then the Broadway stars barge in, and we get my favourite song in the entire show. It's Not About Me on its own is an absolute bop. And you know what? Meryl Streep slays it. In the film it's staged very well, but why is Emma smiling throughout this? These random people have burst in, started singing, made this into a much bigger thing than you wanted, and are all up in your personal bubble, and you're happy. You literally say 5 minutes later that you don't want to start a riot. And basically the first thing these guys say that they're planning to do is to start a riot. It just doesn't make sense. Why are you smiling? Then the principal, who is fighting on Emma's side, talks to Dee Dee and admits he's a big fan. Keegan-Michael Key, who plays Principal Hawkins, was an absolute surprise, and I'm so happy that he's proved himself in this film. He definitely has his own take on the principal, but it works all the same. He's a little awkward, but Key's background in comedy makes this work really, really well. After this, Emma and Alyssa, the closeted girlfriend of Emma and Mrs. Green's daughter, meet under the bleachers. And this is a nice contrast in cinematography. And Dance For You is a beautiful number. This is where we kind of get into the low point of the film, as we build towards the prom. So I kind of rush through this a little bit. The stars get to their hotel and say it looks awful, but come on, I'd happily stay here. The lines are taken from the musical where they literally stay in like a really bad motel. They do a protest gig, but they do it at a truck rally, so they get kicked off the stage. The song from the show gets awkwardly cut in half, but it kind of works well for the comedy. Emma and Principal announce the prom will go ahead, and Keegan-Michael Key delivers this line.
So it's nice to see Emma smile again.
What? What are you talking about? She's been doing nothing but smiling this entire film. What are you talking about? Anyway, everyone gives their promposals in the song You Happened, and the song is laughably cut. Just watch this.
Going back, and that's a promise.
Who thought this was a good idea? It's so jarring. Principal and Dee Dee go to get a drink and flirt quite obviously, and Barry takes Emma shopping in a number that may be overly produced music-wise, but James Corden actually performs quite well, to give him credit. I feel like that's my problem with a lot of the music in the film. I'm never ever going to choose to listen to the movie version of the cast recording over the Broadway cast recording, because it feels way too clean. It feels really processed. It's not as nice to listen to. This is a problem with a lot of movie musicals, and of course The Prom is no exception. But then we arrive at the prom to find out that they've lied to Emma and changed the location, leaving her with a few balloons on the ground and a pathetic banner. This is the moment where Pellman's performance shines. She is heartbroken. This is the lowest moment of her life and she gives it her all. She walks out and Angie chases after her. Next, Nicole Kidman teaches the children about Zaz in a fun filler number that makes me wish she was in the film more. And makes me wish that they actually did a ball change when they shout ball change. Come on, it's literally in the instructions of the song. We get some exposition between Dee Dee and Barry and it's... A lot has been added to the film about Barry's mother, who in the musical is a throwaway line, but in the film is apparently the biggest thing that is holding Barry Glickman back. It's fine, I guess, but it's not a choice that proves its place, especially not in its later resolution. It feels like it's there to get an emotional performance out of Corden to try and get him an Oscar nomination, but let's be real, after your performance in Cats, I don't think you can ever be nominated for an Oscar again. Barry convinces Dee Dee to go see the principal, who's mad because he found out their being here was only to get good publicity. Here, Streep performs The Ladies Improving. It's a great performance, and while she doesn't hit the same highs as Beth Level in the original Broadway cast, it's still a great performance. Now, here is where we get the song Alyssa Green. And this song is performed really well by Ariana DeBose. But I wish there was less cutting away from her talking to Emma to show these random little clips of her and medals and her mum showing her stuff. I mean, I wish it was more about them. Andrew Reynolds goes to have a how did you do fellow kids moment and makes some bigots change their minds way too quickly. Emma announces to the Broadway stars that she's going to take a stand and asks Barry to the prom, which leads to... Then we get Unruly Heart. I honestly don't know how they could have messed up this song. It's such a heartbreaking moment, but a heartwarming moment all the same. And it just works. We meet James Corden's mum. Yeah, this scene is just trying to be another emotional moment, but we literally just had Unruly Heart. This just slows down the pace. And what's worse is that they straight up just repeat this moment again in the film with two other characters, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So Emma sets up a truly inclusive prom to the dismay of Mrs. Green, who storms into the school and tries to shut it down. She confronts the stars but is stopped by Alyssa, who finally comes out and declares her love for Emma. Then they do the prom. It's hella gay. Hooray! The set looks beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love all the work that they did on this. But then Alyssa's mum walks in and accepts Alyssa. I hate this. Mainly because this change was not needed and it's not earned. The original musical doesn't have a resolution between Alyssa and her mum. And this is a realistic representation that some parents just won't come around to it. Not everyone is going to change their ways and accept people for who they are. And even though they do come around, it might not be quickly. But the film gives her this random moment where she just changes her mind and accepts Alyssa, even though this entire film has been her being extremely homophobic. And what's worse is that we've literally just had the whole it's okay to be gay kind of thing come from the extra subplot they add in for Barry's mum. So why is this needed? We've just had this. You doing the same thing over again. If you wanted this resolution, and that's fine, you can have this resolution if you really want to, but you have to make it feel earned. I don't believe that she would suddenly change her mind this quickly. At least put in one scene, just one scene, where she's in Alyssa's room and she's looking at a photo of her and she's thinking about the ways that she'd lose her, and that's the thing that matters to her. Show it. Don't tell it. Show it to us. But despite this, they dance, they have fun, they do a big kiss, and that's the end. The end. No end credits. If I close the film, I can pretend that they didn't make Meryl Streep rap. So, after all of this, what are my thoughts? It's okay. It's another passable musical adaptation. It's pretty faithful, and this is good and it's bad. I was emotionally moved by the story, I laughed along with it, and it's a strong LGBTQ story, but of course I have multiple problems with it. A lot of small directional notes, my disappointment with badly handled subplots, baby James Corden who looks like the 12-year-old has snuck into the prom, a lack of its own voice. I could go on and on about my negatives, but to be fair, I could also go on and on and on about my positives. I think the prom for me was just this truly neutral experience. I enjoyed it, but it's far from the best musical adaptation of all time, actually. To be fair, calling it a musical adaptation, it's really unfair. It's more like, it's a version. It's the film version. Because this film takes no risks. I'm a big fan of the Chicago film because it feels like its own thing. I love the Sweeney Todd film. I know a lot of people don't, but I really do. Because it feels like the film is its own thing. Tim Burton sat down and he was like, this is what works in a film, this is what would only work on a stage. And he cuts the chorus stuff, he plays around with structure, and it feels like its own thing. It's an adaptation. The Prom is not an adaptation. It is the musical on screen. And this is fine. The musical is great in itself. It's got a great story, it's got great songs, so just putting it on film doesn't make it bad. But then again, I just sat there thinking I would much rather be watching the stage version right now. The film version is passable, just like most other musical films. But without theatre this year, I probably would have taken anything. Well, I would recommend going and watching the film because, I mean, I enjoyed it enough. And to not say this would be a disservice to the film itself. But I would definitely say, if you haven't listened to The Prom, listen to the original Broadway cast recording before you go into the movie. Before you have to hear James Corden sing it. I give the Prom film a 5 out of 10. Or 6. I don't know, this is why I never rate films at the end. But now I pass this over to you. What are your thoughts on the Prom film? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Are you painfully neutral on it? Leave all your thoughts in the comments down below because theatre is what? Subjective! But thanks for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting that like button and hitting subscribe. It really helps me continue what I'm doing. Here's a link to some of my other videos. But that's it for me today, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!